Alright, so I spent a ton of time using the PlayStation Portal since it came out, and since then my thoughts and the overall way I use it have changed, and in ways I didn't really think it would. So in today's video, let's talk about what's been good, what's been really bad, and whether or not I think you should drop the $200 to pick one of these up. So let's get into it. Now, I'll be the first to admit I was a bit disappointed when I heard exactly what the Portal was, because like a lot of people, I've been waiting for Sony to make a new PS Vita for, it feels like forever now. One main thing to understand is the Portal is not like the Vita or other handhelds on the market right now, like the Steam Deck and Nintendo Switch. That's because it can't be used without already owning a second device, in this case a PS5. You can't download a game directly onto it or plug in a cartridge or a memory card. Its primary function, its primary use, is to remotely connect to your PS5 over Wi-Fi so you can stream games you've already downloaded to your PlayStation. That's why the Portal part of the name is really accurate to what it is. It's a portable gateway to your physical PS5. But I had a lot of questions about what new things the Portal could bring to the table, since there were already ways to play your PS5 without having to be in front of it, like using the Remote Play app on a smartphone, which can then use with a cheaper Backbone 1 controller or even a DualSense. And I'll talk more about if I recommend the Portal over the Backbone later on in the video. But over the last few months, the Portal did surprise me, even if I don't think it lives up to everything I think it could have been. So let's get into that and how it performs in everyday life. Out of the box, your experience with the Portal is mainly gonna rely on how good of a connection it has to your PS5 at any given moment. And during my time with it, I can say it's been pretty solid for the most part in specific situations. That's because now I know where I'm most likely to have a good connection, and with that, a good overall experience. Most of the time for me, that's been right at home. The Portal has been great for times when I want to switch from the living room to somewhere else like my bedroom or my office. And because of that, it really has expanded how much I want to play and for how long. Like maybe it's just me, but if I'm working at my laptop for a few hours and I start to feel tired, moving to a new area really helps give me that second wind and some more energy. And the Portal sort of gives me that same effect, especially if I can just press pause and take the game somewhere else. So this all sounds really convenient, right? And it is, until you run into variables. So even if I'm at home, if I move to an area that's just a little too far from the Wi-Fi, it won't take long until I see a ton of lag right before the Portal loses connection. Of course, moving back to a place where the Wi-Fi is better can fix it, but you might not always be able to do that, especially when you're away from home and you're not familiar with how good the connection will be. And that could be the case when you're traveling to different hotels or visiting family members in another city or across the country. Sometimes you just don't know how good or how bad your connection will be until you get there. And when I've taken the Portal with me to a few different places around LA, it really has been hit or miss. Even when the connection seems to be going great, it can turn into a mess out of nowhere. So my workaround for that has been to use my iPhone as a Wi-Fi hotspot, which has come in clutch a few times already. But that really depends on if my phone even has good service in that area to begin with. So one thing you can do right now if you don't already have a Portal is to download the PlayStation Remote Play app on your smartphone and see how well it works around your home or other spots you like to visit. This won't guarantee that the Portal will perform exactly the same, but at least it will give you an idea if it's even worth your time. One thing that's good to mention here is that if you're experiencing lag and other issues with the Portal, one of the first things I'd say to do is to plug your PS5 directly into your router with an Ethernet cable, since you'll get better performance with a hardwire instead of Wi-Fi. And if you do that, make sure to go into your PS5 settings afterwards and change it from Wi-Fi to wired LAN, because it doesn't switch automatically. But if you do manage to get a good Wi-Fi connection, you'll be able to play a long time, because in my experience so far, the Portal's battery life has been surprisingly good. Most days I've been able to get maybe a solid 5 hours of battery life before having to plug it back in. And that's been more than enough to last me a full weekend, especially if I'm switching back and forth between it and the TV. And honestly, my expectations for that were pretty low, since the 4 hours I usually get out of my DualSense controllers are probably the thing I dislike the most about them. So for this to power an 8-inch LCD screen and stream at the same time while getting similar battery life to the DualSense is definitely a W in my book. I did make some changes that I think have helped my battery last a little longer, and that's going into the menu settings and turning off vibration and keeping the screen at about 65 to 75% brightness a majority of the time. And since we're talking about that, I'll add that the screen is probably my favorite thing about the Portal. Even though I still wish it was OLED, I think the screen is a perfect size for many situations, and it's gonna be hard to ever play on something smaller. It is only 1080p, but things still look super crisp. You won't have any problem seeing objects that are far away, or the details in your surroundings, or the menus and other items on the screen. And like I mentioned, I don't keep my screen at full brightness, but even then, the colors are almost always bright and vibrant. As long as I had a good Wi-Fi connection, there was never a time playing Death Stranding or multiplayer games like Rocket League that I ever felt I was getting a worse visual experience by using this screen and not the TV. I did find it a little hard to aim when playing shooting games like Helldivers, and I still prefer the TV for that, but I think it's just a matter of getting used to it over time. That being said, I did notice that the screen did seem to struggle when there was a lot of dark colors sometimes, and I would see a lot of pixelation and distortion in those areas. Now that could could be a limitation of the screen itself, or maybe just a Wi-Fi signal being a little weak. Either way, I didn't run into that very often, and when I did, it didn't feel like it was distracting or took away from anything that was happening in the game. And one of those games I spent a ton of time playing was Red Dead Redemption 2. I probably spent a good 80 hours playing it just on the Portal, and I had no problem doing that because it is legit the most comfortable handheld I probably ever used. And that's crazy considering how large it is at 12 inches from side to side and 5 inches from top to bottom. But it works because the Portal is lightweight at just over 1.1 pounds, and aside from the screen, it has the same familiar design of the DualSense. And that's something really important. So when you're playing a game on your PS5 and switch to the Portal, you don't have to reacquaint yourself too much with the new layout. And that's been something I've really appreciated. Like I've said in my past reviews of the DualSense, even if the battery life is horrible, I really do think it's the best controller on the market right now. And with the Portal, you still get some of the same features like haptics, color changing lights, a built-in microphone, and even motion controls. And that goes to say the Portal feels pretty light in the hands despite how big it is. During the last few months, I haven't really had any hand or arm fatigue while playing for a long time, or at least not anything more than I would using the DualSense. The only time I found it maybe a little uncomfortable was when I was laying down, like in bed or on the couch. And that's because I had to keep readjusting it in my hands every few minutes. It's not a big deal, but I definitely don't use it in bed before going to sleep as much as I thought I would, which is probably a good thing. So I think it's best to use a Portal somewhere where you can rest your arms, like at an office chair or a table. Even though it's comfortable, I do have to say I think the placement of some of the buttons and ports could have been way better designed. For example, the volume buttons are located in this little groove behind the top of the screen, and it can be hard to get to them if you're playing a game. I think an option to change the volume from the on-screen menu would be perfect, just like how you can do that with the brightness. And another thing is that the charging port is in this tiny narrow spot on the back of the Portal, which is almost impossible to get to on the first try. Like seriously, I think the only scratches I have on my Portal are right next to this port, because I keep bumping the sides the first few times before the cable finally goes in. If you ask me, this should have been right at the top. So even though the screen is my favorite thing about the Portal, it's also the thing that made me the most nervous. Trust me, for the first month, I treated my Portal like a baby. I did not want to drop or risk cracking this thing. But now, even months later, the screen and everything else for that matter still looks pretty close to new. The buttons and triggers still feel the same. There's no signs of stick drift or dead pixels. I don't think the Portal will survive being dropped too many times. It really does feel delicate, but it looks like it can handle a lot of usage. I do recommend grabbing a case for it though, and I picked up mine off Amazon for about $35. I'm honestly surprised the case wasn't included with it in the box, and I think it's strange that Sony doesn't even sell an official case for it even today. Seems like an obvious thing to have. But overall, I don't think you have to worry too much about the Portal long term, as long as you don't drop it and keep your keys and other things away from the screen. I know a lot of people like to use screen protectors, and I thought about doing that too, but mine is holding up fine so far, and as long as I put it in the case when it's not being used, I'm not really concerned about it anymore. But if you are, I definitely recommend grabbing one since you can get them for less than $10. Alright, so even though there's a lot to like about the Portal, there are still some blatant things I feel definitely need to be called out. One of them is that for some reason, Sony doesn't allow you to connect normal Bluetooth headphones to the Portal. The only wireless headphones that work with it are the PS Link headphones that are only sold by Sony. Those are headphones like the Pulse Elite that cost $150 and the $200 Pulse earbuds. So that means if you already spent a ton of money on a pair of AirPods Max like me, or even Sony headphones that don't come with PS Link, you can't use them unless you connect them with a wire. Of course, you can still use some standard wired headphones, and that's what I've been doing with some old Beats I had laying around. But if you have the original version of the Pulse headphones that came out a few years back, you can use those without a wire if you stay close to your PS5. That's because those connect to the console itself and not the Portal. I tried that for a little bit myself, but the audio kept getting cut off if I moved too far away from my living room, so it didn't really stay an option for me. And while the speakers on the Portal are decent, you definitely want to use headphones if you're playing something a little more immersive like God of War or other single player games. Another thing is that the Portal can't stream games over the cloud, which means no original PS3 games or anything else that uses the cloud and isn't already downloaded on your PS5. There are some rumors that this could change with an update in the future, but that isn't guaranteed. To me, that was a big letdown since I think there are a lot of PS3 games I would definitely hop into again when I don't feel like being in front of a TV. Now on that note, you also can't stream YouTube or media apps like Netflix either. I mean, a major selling point of the Portal is that it's something you can grab when someone else is using the TV. Why does that not apply to movies and videos too? Maybe this is something else that can change with an update later on, but who knows at this point. One major thing that the Portal is missing is a web browser. Now, if you're like how I was, you might not think that's a big deal until you go to a coffee shop, an airport, or a hotel that asks you to enter your email or room number to connect to their Wi-Fi. And that typically means you need to go to their website. That means you're stuck having to find a different way or not using your Portal at all. Just another one of those variables I was talking about. Okay, so when it comes down to it, should you get a Portal? I've been really lucky to have a good experience with mine at home, but the truth is that won't be the case for everybody that buys one. For all the cool stuff it can do, the Portal can be a really frustrating device. This isn't like buying a TV or even a PS5 and expecting millions of people to all have the same experience out of the box. And from some of the posts I've seen online, some people's only experience with the Portal is stuttering and lag that makes it practically unusable. Even though I plan to take mine with me to more places, in the end, I don't really like dealing with unpredictable Wi-Fi situations. But I do think the Portal is great for the way I use it at home, and I'm overall finding more time to play my PS5 now than I was before it. And it also inspired me to re-download the Remote Play app on my MacBook, which has improved a lot since the last time I used it way back with my PS4. Still, I can't help but think about how close to perfect the Portal would have been if we were able to download maybe at least 3 games onto it without needing a constant Wi-Fi connection. I think if you're someone who's already using something like the Backbone 1 controller to play remote PS5 games on your phone, this is definitely an upgrade. But the Portal might be less risky for people who want to simply use it when they want to play in new places around their home or in areas where they know they'll have a good internet connection. And if you end up having a good experience with it when you're traveling and visiting other places, treat it like a bonus. Because if not, you might have to put in some extra work to get the Portal to work for you, even after spending $200 on it. Okay, comment down below and let me know what you think of the PlayStation Portal and if it's lived up to your expectations. And if you want to know more about the DualSense Edge, check out my review here. Catch you next time.